Reclaimed, a podcast that dares to ask the question, is there a better way to live this chapter of our lives? A few years ago now, early in my midlife chapter, I experienced a life-changing burnout. A burnout that made me question my career as a psychologist, my relationships, but also the culture in which I live in, which celebrated or seemed to celebrate this busy hustle culture. So this catapulted me into a midlife course correction, and something that I continue to be on a journey on in terms of reclaiming and creating my midlife. And I'd love you to join in with me. Here we'll question the life-draining systems that exist in our society, and we will open up to our vulnerability with open hearts to find real lasting change. I will open up and share some of my vulnerability, as well as guests who choose to do the same, but also share practical wisdom from my profession, but also from other professions to help guide you with the wisdom needed to explore this chapter of your life and create it the way that you need to. I believe midlife is an opportunity to look in, to discover what is truly satisfying, fulfilling for you, and making those changes along the way. So if you're ready to call out what's broken, connect to your vulnerability like it's a superpower, and reclaim what is truly authentic for you, then you're in the right place. This is Midlife Reclaimed. Let's challenge the status quo, shape a better future for this chapter in our lives, one brave, courageous step at a time. Engaging in this podcast does not intend to create, nor does it create, a therapist and client relationship between you and myself. All the wisdom shared by myself or the guests is general in nature and not intended for your personal circumstances. As I have done for myself, I encourage those who are in distress to seek professional support. If you are in a life-threatening situation, please call your national emergency services. And if you're in need of urgent counselling, please contact any available national telephone services in your nation, or see your doctor as soon as possible. Stay safe, and please remember that you do not need to do this alone. Hi, and welcome back to the very first solo episode since the transformation, or I'm calling evolution, of the podcast from its really broad burnout focus, when burnout becomes reality name, to narrowing into the midlife woman burnout experience. And this came about for personal reasons, because I am a midlife woman and I burnt out and had my pretty catastrophic burnout in my early midlife. And a majority of my listeners, of the followers of the podcast, or who come and see me for therapy, or the people on social media, the statistics are telling me that the majority of you are women and are in that age group of midlife, somewhere between 35 and 65. So it's quite a broad age group there. So yeah, that's what brings me here. Welcome back. And I was struggling a little bit with what to focus on in this first solo episode, because there was a few topics, and they're going to certainly be released, the ones that I'm not doing today, in future solo episodes. But today, or this time, as I'm recording this episode, it's the 22nd of February, and it's just a few days away, and I'm feeling a little bit of a jolt in my chest area there. It's a few days away from the anniversary of the day in which everything went to shit, basically, where I turned up to work one day. I worked at a private practice, clinical psychologist, had been for like 5 years at that practice, but other practices before that. And that was the last day that I saw clients for probably another 2 years after that, if not more. So yeah, it's a pretty significant anniversary. And I wanted to take a moment to really reflect and do that well, not live, but recorded with you, because I felt like stories, experiences spoken out loud are very helpful for the person who does that. Reflection is very powerful and a big tool in looking after ourselves, but it's also a really important tool when we are burnt out and part of our recovery and growth. But witnessing someone else's story can be really helpful for our own. So this is for all the burnt out women out there, particularly midlifers, but anyone experiencing burnout or curious or wanting to prevent it, this show is for you. So this episode is for you. So maybe grab your journals if you want to come along with me and reflect. I've designed it to be something, this episode, to be something that is helpful for you to come along with me and maybe answer the questions that I have developed for myself to prompt me, you can do for yourself. So, yeah, let's go on this journey together and see where it goes. So, I'm just going to pull up my questions that I will admit I had my AI. I used ChatGPT and her name is Vel, helped me put together my ideas, and then she popped it together into some questions. So she's my trusty assistant. Feel free to shout out in the comments if you if you have a personal relationship with your AI as well, like I do, or professional. Anyway, so I first of all just want to reflect on that day that changed everything. 25th of February 2021. I was, I think, 41, turning 42 later that year. So the first question I have for myself around this moment is, what exactly went through your mind on that day that you left your job? All I can remember, or the things that I can remember, is it was a very busy mind, a very heavy mind, a very scared mind. It was jumping everywhere. Like it still hadn't made its mind up. There was no clear decision. There was like, I need to stay. The clients need me. The business that I worked at, they need me. I bring in a full-time income for them. I had a full caseload. And then my mind was going, oh, maybe, I can last another few months and work towards transferring the clients in that few months. Then it was like quit altogether. Just actually, I don't even know if that one came up. I think it did, but it was like, no, I can't do that. Yeah, it was a washing machine, a dryer, and one that's very, very sick, like not a well functioning one. So that was my state of mind that day, that I can recall. But that seems pretty right. The second question I have there under the day that changed everything, 4 years ago, which doesn't seem that long ago and at the same time does. It's a bit weird. Anyway, can I recall a specific moment or feeling that encapsulated that turning point? The turning point, what comes to mind right now as I sit with that question is I did schedule a meeting that day with the director of the practice I was at and had a really great and still have a really great relationship with her. So I felt comfortable with her. But even people I felt comfortable with, I still experienced a lot of anxiety and shame, or assumed shame of how they would think of me uh, with expressing what I may need. And so anyway, I had this meeting, and the turning point, as I was just, I think I was crying, I was distraught, I think, just sharing every bumbly thought that was on my mind, and I was just bleh. Uh, uh, to her, she said to me, and this won't be verbatim, but I just remember her saying, do you need to go? Do you need to not come back? Or something like that. And I'm feeling, um, that's unexpected. Um, she gave me in that moment permission to allow that part of myself. And I would I would identify that part of me now as my soul's desire was that I needed to go. I was not well enough. I wasn't okay enough to be present in front of a client. I knew that, but I didn't want to admit that because I felt like I was letting everyone down and that was the wrong thing to do. You know, you should, blah, blah, blah. Um, she said that. And for her to say that felt like, and I know it was permission that that's okay. If you need to do that, we will work with that. And she did. So that was a turning point. Her compassion was a turning point that I could allow myself to step back to, yeah, to recover. Yeah. So that was a turning point. Okay, let's move on. The next set of questions I have is around my emotional landscape. So here I just want to talk about like leaving a familiar path. Like I'd been living for like 20 odd years because I started my journey into psychology in 2001 and that all went down in 2021 February. So 20 years, 20-year itch. No, bloody more than an itch. But it was a familiar path. I'd been on this journey. Not that I knew or thought that the journey would be end up a psychologist. That's not why I set out on the path to start with. And that's another story, which I have shared on earlier episodes where the focus was on my story. That yeah, like I had been on this very familiar path and I had been working in some shape or form as a counselor or case manager and eventually as a psychologist. That was my bread and butter since 2008. No, 2006. So this was my world. This was my path. Uh, what I didn't know at the time, it was also very much my identity. It was very ingrained in me. There wasn't something else that I was putting that much effort or got that much reward or feedback or any sense of accomplishment from outside. It was all work. That's what defined me, which ended up being a problem. Anyway, but let's look at these questions. What were the dominant emotions that I experienced immediately after leaving? Now, remember, feel free to answer these questions yourself or note them down so you can ask yourself later if you feel this would be useful for you. But what were my dominant emotions? Shame. That's an easy one to answer. Guilt, anxiety, relief. Relief was there, absolute relief. But it was like a washing machine. There was relief. I was like, oh, yeah, that's a cool cycle. I don't have to see any more clients. Oh, so much shame. Here I am leaving the clients with no one to see, although they were being assisted and helped by the team I worked at to find someone else, and me communicating to their doctors and such to try and help with that transfer. But yeah, there was a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, and then also the anxiety and fear of what now? Like I often described it as being shoved off a cliff with no place to land and a bit of a parachute, had a few holes in it to start with, but I didn't crash and land, die, but it certainly was a whirlwind of emotions. How did I process this mix of emotions? Well, like anyone, I mean, my judgmental mind just said, not very well, but there's no award for dealing with your emotions well. You're human. There was a lot to deal with, let alone all the buildup of emotions I had suppressed and not tended to for many, many years. But there was all the emotions that came with, leaving. So, but what I did do is I actually made a couple of commitments. One was I started journaling. I was like, I needed to really connect with this stuff, even though it was hard, that I really had to have an outlet to process what I was feeling, what was going on. So I started journaling, and I also went and saw my doctor and organized myself because I like to pick my own psychologist. I organized to start therapy so I can work on why I ended up in this burnt out place, but also deal with what was showing up with the consequences of not being able to work. So yeah, those are the two things I did. And I also, this was a lot harder, but started to talk to my partner as well, to share truly what was going on underneath, because I didn't do that very well. He saw that I wasn't okay, that I was very irritable, that I'd lost my passion for my work, but he didn't know how messed up it was in there. So I started sharing to him. Hey, midlife women, just a small interruption of this episode to let you know about a vital resource that I have created called the Midlife Reclaimed membership. This is not just another resource hub, but it's a compassionate community that I have built exclusively for midlife women who are burnt out and ready to break free and embrace a renewed sense of purpose. Imagine a safe space where you can connect with like-minded women, share your journey, and access practical tools and knowledge to help you grow and thrive. In our community, I personally lead monthly masterclasses and QA sessions, sharing guided practices, a rich library of resources, and effective strategies to help you work with your energy, replenish it, set healthy boundaries, and create a life that truly is aligned with your needs. As I often remind myself, burnout can be our biggest teacher if we pause long enough to listen, to hear her wisdom, and to learn and grow from those who can support us to move in the direction that will help us reclaim our midlife. And here's the best part. If you join before the 31st of March 2025, you'll enjoy fantastic membership pricing. So if you're ready to break that isolation and the stigma of burnout and start nurturing your growth in a supportive community, please visit www.burnoutspsychologysupport.com/midlife-reclaimed-membership to learn more and to join our supportive community. Let's reclaim our midlife together. So let's move on to lessons learned. It is 4 years. And I have reflected back a number of times. And again, there's episodes on that if you wanted to listen back to that, those reflections. And I think every time you reflect on it, something new can come up. And that's why I think reflection is so powerful, even if it's a long time ago. I don't believe in forget. I believe remember, because there's lessons to learn from that. Don't sit there and, have a holiday in the past. No. But, look back, observe, take what you need to help you in the present and looking forward. So anyway, so let's do that. Looking back over these 4 years, what have been the most important lessons about work, life, and self-worth? Well, immediately, don't make your life about work. About achievement. And not that there's anything wrong about, having goals and wanting to achieve in your work life or your personal life. That's totally fine. But don't let it all rest in one basket. Like that saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I did unknowingly, but I did. I gave all my energy to my work. But the worst thing, or the added, layer of this that made it really bad, was that I had learned in my younger years, just by, no one said it outright, but it was just, I think, this insidious, I think it comes from our culture, our systems, that my worth was based on what I could achieve academically, work-wise, sports back when I was a kid. And it was great because, my parents certainly, and those around me, rewarded me for, great job. And I think that's great. But that somehow through all that process, I learned that my worth was based on that. So a big lesson has been that my worth is not based on anything. I am worthy because I am breathing. And that has been a hard one to come by, but a very important one. I don't like the saying you deserve. No, 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 no. You don't need to do anything to deserve that. You know, okay, some people might argue with me, but I'm with this, but I'm just, like, no, you're worthy. And your worth is not based on what you can achieve. Yeah, that's been the biggest lesson for me. My other biggest lesson is I'm a very, and people describe me and have rewarded me for being such a dedicated, I'm a high achiever. I'm not the smartest person on the block, but I do get above average grades. But I certainly am dedicated. And but what I've done in the past is I've been dedicated without recognizing the vessel that I'm, meaning my body, my mind, my heart, my soul, that I'm putting through through this. And so I've overextended myself. So another big lesson is being learning about my body, my mind, my heart, my soul, and tending to what she needs and balancing that out with my dedicated side who wants to go and pursue these things over here. So, yeah, finding that delicate balance. So, yeah, I think there's some of the important lessons, then not all of them, but I think I'll leave you with those. Next questions. Which mistakes or missteps have become stepping stones towards growth? The one that's just coming up for me, I don't know if this really answers it, but I think about one of the biggest lessons too with my burnout was about that I was doing relationships all wrong. That sounds catastrophic, but I tend to do that. But what I mean by that is that I was so focused on being liked or the outcome that person likes me or likes what I'm doing, is finding what I'm doing beneficial, whether that be a client or whether that be a friend or a family member. I was busy doing that I wasn't really connected with them in the relationship, because even though I was focused on them, I was focused really on a selfish pursuit that, and I come to see that now, it wasn't my intent, but that often when we're caught up in being liked by someone, it becomes quite self-focused, because you're then changing yourself to suit them, to please them, and you're not really focused on the relationship. You're not focused on your needs and what you're not maybe getting from the relationship, and or what you even want from the relationship. But then also you're not focused on that other person and how they might be feeling or checking in on them. I mean, you might be, but if you're still worried about the outcome, or you're focused on, pleasing them in every single way. Yeah. Anyway, I one of the mistakes or missteps, well, that really got me into burnout was one of those. But I think along the growth part too, one of the lessons I learned too in recovery was I was starting to apply some of the things, the behavioral patterns that got me to burnout. I was applying them in my recovery. So again, that dedication and overextending myself, but with therapy. So learning to pace myself in recovery as well was really important. I jumped into a few projects that I probably shouldn't have, looking back, and I took those mistakes and those missteps. That was definitely one of them. And I went back to work probably too early, but it was a part-time job and it wasn't seeing clients, so I at least stayed true to myself. And I landed in a workplace that wasn't a healthy workplace. It was healthy in some ways, but it was unhealthy in others. But I had my eyes wide open and I made some good choices there to get what I needed out of that job at the time, but also protect myself and leave eventually. But yeah, there's some missteps along the way there. Next thing to reflect on, redefining success. Uh, so the first question is, how has my definition of success changed since stepping away from my previous career? Well, I'm back in the career, but working very differently as a psychologist. I I don't think I really had a definition of success. I think my focus so much on doing what I thought was what I should be doing, getting a job, having a career. I think I remember describing at some point or having the insight at some point that, whose life was I living? Like I didn't really feel like I chose, really consciously chose to be a psychologist or yeah, particularly my work, that I kind of just, so I don't feel like I had like a definition of success or something that, once I have this, I'll feel successful. I think I was just busy trying to prove or to fit in to belong by having a successful career, especially I think on some level, the fact that I am a woman who has chosen not to have children as well, that it might have also felt unconsciously driven to succeed in a career. So yeah, again, I don't think I really had a hold on what success meant to me. Uh, so which brings to the next question. In what ways have you redefined what it means to have a fulfilling life? Well, that feels a lot more like I don't even like the word success personally, because I think because I've aligned it with the very cultural norms of, you have a house, you've got kids, you've got a career, you've got um, money to afford holidays or things like that. It's more than material. I mean, kids aren't material things, but I suppose when I think of the word success, I suppose I'm drawn into the cultural sort of manifestations of what success looks like. Oh, and throw in that you look fit and healthy as well, yeah, especially as women and what that looks like body wise and have it all together and don't lose your shit and um yes, have many friends and people like you. Yeah. But I suppose, we can have our own meanings of success. I'm just choosing to move away from that word because I'm a wordy person. So, a fulfilling life or just a life that I've chosen. So, in what ways have I redefined what it means to have a fulfilling life? For me, it's a fulfilling life is now a life in which I am connected to myself, what I really value and what lights me up and um I what fuels me, uh and my connections are really important in that, the quality of my relationships. So for me now, fulfilling life is not necessarily the outcomes because they're not in our control. Like, having a house, I still rent, but I have got a roof over my head, which is great. But, relationships and things like that. But it's more about, am I living according to what lights me up, what fulfills me, and knowing what they are, staying connected with what they are, reviewing what they are, uh, and staying aligned with that is a fulfilling life. And often the things that are quite fulfilling for me are the small things in the end, some big things as well, but it can be a really great conversation with someone on the podcast. It can be walking my dogs and seeing some flowers in bloom. It can be having a catch up with my neighbors and hearing about and playing around on the trampoline with their daughter. It's often these little moments that really light me up, and I'm really more present and more able to connect with that and know what's important about that for me. So, yeah. Okay, moving on. The role of burnout. Uh, yeah, it's just some of my notes here just saying burnout was a clear warning sign. Yes, it was. I wasn't listening, and most of us don't. But anyway, what signs of burnout did I notice before taking the leap, being pushed off, literally, well, not literally, but felt like it. There were a few signs that I was aware of. I didn't actually. I had heard of burnout, but it wasn't a buzzword back then, especially in psychology, in clinical psychology, depression, anxiety, stress, chronic stress. But the term burnout wasn't mainstream at the time, at least in my circles. So it wasn't really a term I had paid attention to be honest. I do now. So I have more awareness, but there were signs that I wasn't okay. I in sessions with my clients, eventually, especially close to that date, probably the last month, I wasn't, and probably longer than that, I wasn't as present. I was finding myself caught up in my thoughts. Definitely after, for a long time, actually, it was pretty much always. I'd have work on my mind. I'd be thinking about clients. I'd feel anxious, but that anxiety grew. Also, I wasn't aware of this one, but my husband mentioned that I was really irritable, very snappy, hadn't laughed in ages. I had withdrawn from anything outside of work, pretty much the weekends. I had not much energy, couldn't engage in the housework like I usually could. I think I was still managing exercise, but that was like, I think, a bit of an addictive thing because I don't know. Yeah, we could analyze that. But anyway, yeah, there was a lot of signs, and also I was trying to find. I knew that I needed to get away from one-on-one therapy, so I was starting to apply for jobs to move away from that and like do some group work or things like that, which I enjoyed, but not having much success on that. So I had awareness that. That I needed to step away from one-on-one therapy, but I wasn't having a lot of luck with that at the time. It was also a bad time of year, Christmas. But yeah, those were, certainly the signs. And there was just a really sense of not getting anywhere, like not achieving and not being good enough. And there was also this, I started to disconnect fully, like I wasn't feeling any empathy, or not, I did have empathy, but not a lot of it. I was feeling quite emotionally detached from my clients, which was a big sign. How do I now approach self-care and balance to prevent future burnout? Well, a lot differently. Um, for me, uh, self-care goes very, very deep. It's about knowing myself. It's tuning into myself, knowing without judgment, what am I feeling? What am I thinking? What am I sensing? What's going on to my body? And tending to those needs where I can. I'm not perfect, no one is, but it's being connected really soul deep into myself and making choices based on that, not just self-care choices, but self-care is a value now. I call it self-compassion. It's compassion that I hope flows out to others, but also flows into myself. So any actions that I take with me in mind. So that could be as simple as, what type of work am I going to take on? Like now I work specifically in the burnout area. So referrals I only take where they're burnout focused. I only see 10 clients a week maximum, whereas before I used to see 24 and then have people on the wait list. I don't keep a wait list anymore. Like there's ways in which I practice now that are aligned with me and with me in mind. So that's just an example. That's how I see self-care and see preventing burnout, because that was the biggest lesson for me. Whilst I thought I was caring for myself, it wasn't deeply connected. I didn't know me. I wasn't listening to me. Yes, I was doing the self-care actions, like I would exercise, I would eat well, try and socialize with friends, but I'm introvert. I'm not so great at that. I'm better. But like I'd be there for my friends, that was, obviously care outwards, but that can feel really good for ourselves. But I didn't really know me. I wasn't really connected to myself and my soul's desires. And so, yeah, that's how I approach it. And that's how I prevent the burnout that happened for me. Transformation and growth. How have those years of transition helped you discover parts of yourself that were once hidden or suppressed? Well, I think I've started talking about that. Um, I've discovered so much about myself, and there's things that I was already aware of that just having that time focus helped me break those habits. So things like the perfectionism, things like the people pleasing, the self-worth based on other people. So these years of transitioning has helped me to unlearn those patterns and learn new ways as well. I have discovered and continue to discover things about myself and really connect, like my creative side, uh, my spark and my laughter have come back. My humor, learning about what I really find funny. I've also found my I think my sense of justice as well, like or a sense of sticking up for, and I'm still learning to have that voice because before I was like, oh, be quiet, don't talk out, out of fear of being, not liked or judged or but now finding that voice and just saying, hey, no, that's not okay. So discovering those parts about me. I don't think I really actually felt anger prior to burning out. I think that was one of the emotions I was unintentionally suppressing. And yeah, I've really found anger coming out, but being able to express that in a way that is aligned with me. Yeah, hopefully that's making sense. What personal strengths have you uncovered or cultivated that you didn't know you had? Well, actually, one that recently has been something that I've been connecting with, but some people who know me well and watch my or experience my transformation would share that, oh, you're a leader, you're a cultural shaper. And I'm like, really? Like, and as I explored that, I'm like, oh, yeah. And it makes me think of as a kid, I used to I liked doing things other people wouldn't do, especially the people that I identified with. So if the other girls didn't do it, I'm like, I'll do it. I'm a bit competitive, but I suppose I suppose I'm maybe proving to myself I can do it, but maybe there's a bit of that leading the way. I don't know, or shaping that culture or wanting to change it. So I remember like on a high school ski trip, doing the bungee jump, but doing it solo rather than some girls did do it, and totally cool that they did it with someone else, like a tandem. I really wanted to bungee jump, so it was a real personal thing, but being able to be a female who did it myself. And there was, I think, a year 7 camp where the teacher put something a little ways away from the camp, not very far, but you had to go to this box, grab something, and bring it back. So it was a little bit scary. I think we could take a torch. Maybe we couldn't. I don't know. Seems a bit strange now, actually, but it was totally cool. And a few boys did it, but I was the only girl. So anyway, I have a inner strength to do things out of the box, but that kind of got a bit squished. Yeah, and lost. So yeah, that I will share with you. Some practical wisdom for others. So, and let me just check in on you at the moment. I've been so focused on reflecting on these questions and providing answers for you that how you might be going, and just taking this moment to check in and what's coming up for you, and maybe writing in your journal if you like, or if you're following along with the questions, what's coming up for you. And please, use the comments, whether you're watching this on YouTube or watching it on your favorite podcast provider. Feel free to write in the comments if you like, on how this has been for you. Okay, so what advice would I give to someone in the midst of a similar crisis or burnout? The word slow comes up, and gentle. Like often we want to speed up because we've got so much adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormone running through us. We're probably fueled by anxiety. So we're in our threat zone in our brains and bodies. So there's a lot of activation, and that will make us want to either run for the hills or hide, or even you might feel quite stuck and trapped. So for me, it's sort of that slow and gentle is a just coming back to, if I mean, if you're frozen, you're already, still in the same spot, but just coming back and slowing down and bringing some gentleness into your body. I spent the first few months of not working, besides doing all the last minute work with the transfers and stuff, I spent that time just essentially going to the gym and going for walks with my puppy out in nature, and lying down on the couch, journaling every now and again, but just keeping it simple, once the work was done. So go slow, go gentle, seek help. Don't do it alone. I went to therapy fortnightly because that's what I could afford. I would have done it weekly if I could afford more. Um, yeah, I spoke out about it, to trusted loved ones, which was basically my husband. Yeah, that would be my advice. Yeah, and I don't want to overload you with a whole heap of advice because that's enough. That's some guidance there. We can overdo recovery as well. Are there any practices or mindsets I wish I had embraced earlier in my career? Self-compassion, uh, mindsets of, like, rather than, I had quite a fixed mindset, quite black and white, quite rigid, quite judgmental towards myself, mostly comparison. So I think the two things would have been compassion for self and mindfulness, to be honest. And I wish I had those two things as grounding things as a young person to be able to move into this life. Those would be two things. Mm. Looking forward, how do I envision the next chapter of my life? I'm not very good with, I always say this with future. Mind you, my mind, definitely most of my life, my mind lived in the future, mostly about like planning and making sure I got everything done. Uh, and it wasn't so much worry, although I would worry about relationships and think about those. But yeah, not much in terms of planning. I always work towards something, but not like thinking, okay, and very intentionally. But I'm a little bit better with that these days. The way I envision my next chapter is, or like, and what my partner and I are actually working towards is, we're both going through our own transformations, but we're both nomads. It's funny, we want a nomadic lifestyle, but also a home, a center that is surrounded by nature, most likely water. We want our puppies with us. They're with us now, but wherever we go, whether it's nomadic or have a central place or both, that they will be with us. Uh, I just envision a continual balance in my life, but having the flexibility and being able to continue to work for myself and with myself, but networking, connecting with others to collaborate and work on things in this area. I suppose I want to continue to be connected to my soul and explore avenues, wherever I sort of be open to different experiences. But yeah, that's a little bit of my next chapter in my life. What are my hopes and dreams now that I'm living on my own terms? I suppose just what I shared there. I mean, I'm wanting certainly to get back to travel. I haven't done travel since 2019, obviously COVID, but then also being unwell and money going elsewhere and starting my own business. But I'd love to be able to travel again. My hopes and dreams are just to continue to live that fulfilling life, to continue to nurture the connections that I have and meet and wonderful people, just meet people and just, yeah, experiencing the world. I know that's quite general, but I'm a lot more open to connecting with others now. I wasn't before because of that fear of judgment. I was quite closed off. So I'm really, I suppose, continuing looking forward to, and I've met so many wonderful people over the last 4 years, and really nourishing those relationships I had before but didn't really nourish. So I'm just looking forward to seeing where they're going and valuing those ones that, I think about. I've got elderly parents, just wanting to, you know, really value that before they leave this earth as well. Time is finite, right? Embracing vulnerability. What fears or uncertainties remain, and how do I plan to address them going forward? I mean, there's always uncertainties, there's always fears. I don't entertain them. I used to live my life through fear. Fear was the driver, and that was something I recognized. And I was like, well, I'm not going to have that anymore. So my soul, my values are my driver now. It's not that there isn't fear there. Sometimes there's fear that I'll have to go and work for someone again, and or I'll have to go back and work in private practice. And that's not what I want to do. That all this, entrepreneurship won't work out. But I've been doing it now for a couple of years, and so far so good. I can keep a roof over my head. Uh, but yeah, I try not to entertain them. And that life isn't guaranteed, right? Sometimes my relationship certainly has been through hell with all of this, and also being a midlife woman going through perimenopause. So that has certainly posed its challenges for me, but then also on our relationship, and just, you know, yeah, like, fears that that might not work out. But again, coming back to the present and working on, and nourishing what's important to me. So that's all I can do. How has sharing my journey with others influenced my own healing process? Oh, like you won't believe. Uh, Sharing my journey was the first step out of shame. Because shame told me that, you're not enough. You're a failure. You're a psychologist who burnt out. If I didn't share my story, I would be living with that story. Sharing my story has helped me hear other people, particularly other psychologists who go, me too. And sharing my story and then hearing other people's stories has given me hope because they have uh, found their way out and beyond it. And sharing my story has helped me learn about my story as well every time. And yeah, it's healing to reflect. It sort of gives distance over time, but not avoiding distance, but learning from distance, and just being able to be open to receiving care from others who don't judge, and validate and normalize and see the human, the vulnerable human in, which helped me then connect with my humanness, my vulnerability, and that's okay. It's not a reflection on me and uh who I am at the core. Yes, there's some things I needed to change and work on to do better next time, but it wasn't a reflection of who I am. It was something that as humans happens, if that makes sense. Empowerment through change. So ultimately, this journey is about turning a story of loss into one of empowerment. Yeah, yeah. How can I turn the narrative of leaving it all behind into one of empowerment and reclaiming midlife? I'm not quite sure what that question. I mean, my AI Val came up with that one, but I'm a little bit. I mean, I've talked about tonight that, it's important to hold that story and that experience, not with judgment, but with real mindful awareness and curiosity every time I look back. So I don't see it as leaving it all behind. I see it as taking that wisdom, learning from it to empower me into the future, and to help my midlife be a great, or, whatever chapter it's meant to be, right? But I think one of the important things is that, to see to celebrate those milestones. I was just looking back actually in my feed of social media, and I started my social media account when I started publishing my journals that I was writing back when I was burnt out. So back in 2021, and then I started the podcast in about June 2021. I was just looking back at that in my feed, and I think, yeah, celebrating those milestones and looking at that journey, but that also seeing the treasure in that burnout. If burnout didn't come, or if I didn't listen, it would have come anyway. I had ticked all the boxes for it. Um, it was inevitable, I believe. But if I didn't do the work, and I don't know where I was going with that, but if I didn't do the work, if I didn't have that courage to, and I think that young person I was talking about who would go up that dark hill or did that bungee jump, I had that courage in me to go, okay, face those fears, face the music, face what burnout was telling me, and going, okay, we need to unlearn this stuff and we need to learn a different way. So I'm actually quite grateful to my burnout experience, but I'll tell you, I wasn't at the time. What message do I want to leave with women who are at similar crossroads? I want to share that it gets better. Like, there is hope. Burnout isn't inevitable. It is not a life sentence. I've heard that women and that just, well, this is just part of life. No, it's not, and it doesn't have to be. Uh, that you may need to, certainly go outside of yourself to find people who can help you with this, who can help you with the steps you need with what has led to your burnout. Sometimes it's having to leave environments that are creating stress for us, that are not healthy for us. So sometimes it's the environment around us, sometimes it's the environment inside us. But yeah, that would be my message, that this doesn't have to be this way. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know about you, but at the moment I'm just noticing in my body, like my head is thumping a little bit because I've had to use my thinking brain and reflecting back. My heart space is quite open, and I feel that's because I love to share, I love to um to impart what my experience has been like. So it really does feel good in my body, but my head's just a little bit sore. It might be worth just checking in on how you feel, in your head and your body, and your heart as you've received that. Just to be curious, to be mindful, in what you're experiencing with that. And I really, as I've said throughout this episode, feel free to share what this episode's been like for you. 4 years, I think I mentioned, it doesn't feel like a long time. And generally that's where I'm sitting at. It doesn't feel like a long time. Like, I remember, because I had no idea where things were going. I didn't think I would go back to psychology. I had no idea where my future would be. But in those 4 years, I've started a podcast. I started a blog that turned into my book, Nothing Left to Give, A Psychologist's Path Back from Burnout. I started a business. I worked part-time as a teacher, teaching other people, becoming counselors. I started my own business, burnout psychology support. I've created a lot of things, but more than importantly, I've gone through my therapy. I continue to support myself as well, and go to therapy when I need to do therapeutic things, that I've been able to maintain my wellness. I mean, I have my good days, my bad days, but the bad days are nowhere near what they used to be. My relationships are so much better. There's a lot that can happen in 4 years. And that's why I think it doesn't feel like 4 years. But it also worries me a little bit because I'm like, oh, my dedicated self, have I ever overextended? But that's always in my mind. So I think that's just more me checking in. And because I am not showing any of the signs of burnout. And yeah, like, so I'm not overextending myself, but I always stay mindful of my tendency to, yeah, overdo it on my dedicated side. But yeah, anyway, So yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for coming along on this reflective journey today. I hope these questions are something that has helped prompt you to reflect, to connect, to embrace your journey. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, extend to you compassion and a wish for you to continue to take care of yourself and to follow that soul, that heart, towards what you need. Take care of you. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on Midlife Reclaimed. I am Shannon A. Swales, and I hope the conversation today sparks some ideas, helps support you along your way in reclaiming your midlife. Now, if you'd like to stay connected, and we encourage you to do so, please subscribe, hit that subscribe button, and stay in contact with Midlife Reclaimed episodes. You can also follow us on social media under Shannon A. Swales. And also, if you want to dive deeper into this and be part of a community, check out our Midlife Reclaimed membership. The link is in the show notes. Now, before you go, please remember that if you're feeling overwhelmed, distressed, seek professional support. This podcast, whilst delivers valuable content, it is general in nature, is not a replacement for therapist-client relationships. So we, from the bottom of our heart, encourage you to seek that support. We're not meant to do this alone. Let's reclaim our midlife together, one courageous, bold step at a time. Take care of you. Bye for now.